welcome everyone to a unique Endurance Matters podcast. We have a swapping of responsibilities. BigMetz, your host, is taking a hot seat. So with all that he has going on, we thought it would be a good time for us to kind of use this opportunity to really talk about the endurance mindset and have him, talk through about what it means to show resilience in the face of adversity, which is, initially what our podcast was all about. So I'm Marcus. I'm the executive producer. We have Justin BigMetz Metzler, 11-year pro now, 12 years, 11. What are we coming
12,
up?
yeah, 12.
12.
This is 12. Next year will be 13.
13, lucky 13. All right. So lucky 13, positive attitude. So we're going to keep the show format. So we know the audience kind of loves what Justin has been able to do with our amazing guests so far. So we're going to keep the format. So with that, we're going to dive right in. All right. So we have a hard-hitting question off the bat. So Justin, you have to do a relay at Challenge Roth. Okay. And you have Jeannie and your dad. Okay. Back in his prime. All right. So, and you can provide some context in a little bit, but so you guys have to do Challenge Roth as a relay, the full distance. So let us know who's going to do what leg and what your anticipated finish time is.
Whoa, that's a good question. I think if we're going for our best split, the factor here is going to be my dad, because he was like a 6 hour and 40-minute 70.3 athlete in his prime. And so I'm glad that you said prime, because I think nowadays he might struggle a little bit across the board with a full Ironman, but he would get it done even now. I think our best bet would be for my dad to do the swim. Okay. And I think he could knock out an hour 30 in the swim. Okay. Maybe an hour 35. All right. I think we would have me bike. Mm-hmm. I think I could ride 350. All right. So we're getting a little time back on the bike. Yep. So what are we at? We're at 25.
About 520.
520? Yep. Yeah, so we're at 520, and I think Jeannie could run a 250, 245. Let's just call it 250 to be safe. So we're at 810?
810 plus another 10 minutes or so transition, right?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if we're just tagging off, everyone's ready, so the transition time should be pretty quick. Yeah. So, 810, 815. That wouldn't be far off my solo PR, so that'd be pretty good.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So we'll get into kind of the history with your dad here in a little bit. So one other kind of follow-up question on that. If you were to pick two of your training buddies now and you had to go for it, right, and say maybe, the sub-7, right, which was popular a couple of years ago, Christian and Joe and their teams kind of tried that, who would you select from your training, people that right, that you could, get a group together and say, okay, we're really going to go for it?
Yeah, I think Boulder has a lot of people, but I don't have that many current training partners. I think if I was able to go back and select my training partners in their prime, I would probably have a decent list of pretty solid athletes. I think if we're just talking about the ones who I train with now, it would probably be a solid combination of like Mark Dubrick, who would really be able to help on the swim. I think it'd be Rudy Von Berg and Andre on the bike, and probably those, combination of those three on the run. Maybe Matt Sharp would be able to help us out on the swim and the bike and the run a little bit. I think in their and also, I mean, Matt Hansen would be a good one, but I think he's almost too quick on the run. Right. And so maybe he'd be a good pacer. He'd have to slow down a little bit, but I think he'd be fine there. And then obviously T.O. would be really consistent. The thing is, T.O. still got it. I rode with him not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, and he still can climb just fine. So I guess depending on the course, maybe we throw T.O. in the mix, but it'd probably be a combination of those 5 dudes.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll get into kind of the Boulder scene a little bit later. So let's kind of rewind a little bit, and forgive me, I'm just getting off a little cold if I cough here, but, kind of walk us through your journey, right? As an amateur, growing up in Chicago, kind of seeing your dad do the races, and take us through kind of what that looks like and bring us to, your journey as a professional athlete.
Yeah. So like Marcus mentioned, I grew up in Chicago. It's not really a super endurance sport town. I guess where I grew up in this place called Glenview, but Chicago area actually had quite a few good junior triathletes. Ben Canute was only 2 or 3 towns over. Lucas Verzbickus, who was one of the first high schoolers to break 4 minutes in the mile, was a triathlete at the time, and he was sort of prodigy triathlon wonderkin type dude. So, and he was also just a couple towns down the road. So we had quite a few really good triathletes sort of in the area. But I didn't grow up in the high performance scene. I was just sort of doing it with my dad because my dad joined a triathlon team to lose weight in a work weight loss competition. My dad was a college football player, and so he, picked up a couple lbs in the office over the years, and sort of wanted to get back into fighting shape. And so he saw this triathlon team at the local rec center and signed himself up and started doing this triathlon training. And I think he was first or second in the competition. He's a competitive guy like me, and so he was determined to sort of win the competition. I think he lost something like 20 pounds training for the triathlon, and sort of got the bug along the way. And so he probably did triathlon for maybe 1 or 2 years, and I just observed him doing it. I was into normal sports as a kid. I was really huge basketball player. I played a little bit of golf in high school, played baseball. I was really passionate about baseball, but I've always just been like uber competitive, and always really dove into the sports, just identified as an athlete, but didn't necessarily have the minerals to back it up on the basketball court or the baseball diamond. And so when I got to high school, I was sort of struggling a bit because it wasn't like it was just natural for me to go, make the varsity basketball team. I honestly wasn't good enough. And so when my dad started doing the triathlon thing, he said, "Why don't you just, I know you love sports, just come to a practice with me." So me and all of his, middle-aged friends, we popped into the pool, and I couldn't even swim at 25. I was probably 12 years old at this point. And from there, I just honestly I just liked it. I like spending time with my dad. I thought it was really cool to sort of be in an environment and have an identity that other kids my age didn't have, and just stuck with it a lot. And I liked it immediately. I don't know what it was about the sport, but I enjoyed that sense of accomplishment. I liked the training. I liked like getting outside and being outside. And as I mentioned, having the identity of just something when you're searching for something as a 12, 13-year old. All teenagers that age don't know what they're doing and they're lost. So to have something that you find and can make your own, that was really cool for me. And then yeah, it got legs quick. And my dad was doing long course triathlons, and so one of my first triathlons, I think I did an Olympic distance first, and then maybe a couple sprints the first year. But at the end of the first season, I did a half Ironman when I was 15 years old called the Spirit of Racine, and I
Wow.
think I went 550 as a 15-year-old. And I remember that really being the thing that got me hooked, and I became a fan of the sport there. There were pros at the race, so I observed their times. I think they're going 350, and I was like, wow, they're going 2 hours faster than me, and that sort of implanted a seed of what I wanted to do, and I just wanted to get better from there, so stuck with it and kept going.
Yeah, it's funny. Your dad's a little bit of an OG in the space, right? Back before triathlon was super popular. I had the same. My dad was doing triathlons starting late 80s when they had the Bud Light series. He was probably drinking Bud Light in transition. I wasn't there to necessarily see it, but and then he got into long course with a bunch of guys. I grew up in the Metro New York area. And then two, he did his first Ironman at Lake Placid, 2000. So it was the second year that they had it. And I just remember being there. And like I grew up playing basketball. I played in college a little bit, and kind of growing up in the Jordan era. And then I remember him doing that race. I'm like, how is this possible? How can you actually do this bike and then go run a marathon? So like you and like many other kind of age groupers out there, we share that experience, right? Of having, a loved one, maybe a parent, a sibling, what have you. And also the NBC, right? Hawaii Kona series. I'm sure too, once your dad got into triathlon too, you kind of saw that and like, wow, like that's something. I remember watching those with my dad and crying and be like, how is this possible? So take us to the next step, right? So you go to college, so you develop kind of a passion for triathlon, and what happens next?
Yeah, so like I said, I got into it maybe when I was 12 or 13 and never really had the initial ambition to be really quick. I didn't even know that world existed until maybe 2 years down the line. Because I started off from such a relatively slow point, my progression was pretty quick. Over the course of 2 years, I went from I think I did another 70.3 2 years later, and I think my time was something like 420. And so I was able to chop off 90 minutes over the course of 2 years in a 70.3 distance. And then I went from not even featuring in my age group or in the overall at a local a Sprinter Olympic triathlon to sort of being in the top 10 overall and winning my age group. And so I remember winning my age group sort of as a 13, 14, 15-year old at a, local sprint triathlon. We had a lot of triathlons in the Chicago area. So, and in Wisconsin as well, and in Minnesota, Indiana. So the whole Midwest had a pretty significant triathlon presence, and at the time it
Right.
was really popular, big races. And so I did all those races throughout the summers, and the better that I got, the more I got into it. And yeah, like you said, I always look back at my college experience as an interesting time because and I am empathetic to kids now, and I sometimes chat to kids like through my coaching who are in a similar position, whether they're in high school or early years or in college right now, who are sort of in a tricky position because as a 16 to 17-year-old, you're forced to make a decision as to what you're going to do for the next 4 years. It's a big commitment, whether you're going to pay for that yourself or your parents are going to pay for it, or whatever it is. It's a massive decision, and I think there's a lot of pressure, whether that's from internal, from your peers or your teachers or your parents who are influencing that decision to go one way or another. And so I think I had a combination of all those factors, and I just sort of on a whim went on a few college tours and was like, I'm going to go to the University of Iowa. It was one of the schools I was accepted to. They had a exercise physiology degree, and because I was so immersed in triathlon at the time, I knew that's what I wanted to study because I always wanted to be in this. I really was passionate about this already.
Right.
And then it was close enough where I could still drive to and from home. I wasn't ready to be like that far away from my family just yet. So I went to Iowa, but I like to say my college experience was like part-time student, full-time triathlete. And that was kind of the one of the things that, some kids when they go to college, they take that freedom and they run with it in a different way. Maybe they
Right.
start partying more or socializing more or, experiencing other different parts of life. For me, it was like, oh, well, now I can just train as much as I want.
Right.
And so I pretty much went from like training as much as I could in high school, and my parents and my community around me saw how passionate I was about triathlon, especially like my senior year of college or high school. And I was barely going to high school my final senior year. I mean, they would let me train all morning. I had missed the first two periods. They let me train at lunch. They gave me early dismissal to go train. I think I did like four classes and the rest was just
Right.
training. And then I carried that when I got over into college, but struggled a lot because I was a party school. There were some triathletes, a couple of really good triathletes who I ended up becoming friends with, but it's not really a triathlon mecca. And I think at that point I was kicking myself because then I was really into it and really obsessed with it. And I sort of wish that I had maybe made a different direction, like come out here to Boulder or gone to California, gone to somewhere in San Diego, just somewhere with like more people who I felt understood what I was doing and trying to achieve. So I just found it a little bit difficult to assimilate where you've got 25,000 kids more or less not doing what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I struggled with that. So I did 2 years in Iowa, and then I dropped out of college and moved back home. And I remember sitting in my backyard with my mom actually, and I just like I was upset, and I just like told her straight up like I got to drop out of school. Like I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I can't keep doing the Iowa thing. And both my parents were really cool, and I went back home, went to community college for a year, and they asked me what I wanted to do, and I was like, I just want to be a pro triathlete. They kind of knew what that meant, and like you said, they watched the Kona broadcast, and I think they knew that was a thing.
Right.
But they're also like they're corporate folks,
Yeah.
and they went to college, they got degrees, they got jobs out of college, they had traditional paths. And so for me to say to them like I want this untraditional career path, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm good enough or whatever. I think they just wanted to see me happy, and so they were like super super supportive early on, and that helped my career tremendously. So essentially, fast forward, I went to community college for a year. I realized I wasn't that far off track getting my human physiology degree. I ended up transferring back to Iowa for my senior year of college and ended up graduating in 4 years and getting my degree. So it was a little bit of a snaky way to do it, but I got my degree.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was just off to the races. Actually, my final semester in college, I turned pro, started racing on the professional circuit, and I was just off you go.
Yeah. Off you go. It's just when you think about the college scene today in collegiate sports, right, with the NIL and everything that's going on, it's it's just incredible, right? And when you think about, especially basketball and football, those kids, I mean, not only do they not have to pay and scholarship, they're getting compensated significantly, right? Then you look at some of the other sports, maybe track and field, and some of the other kind of quote unquote lesser known sports that don't necessarily generate revenue for the schools, right, through their TV deals. It's a struggle, for for those young ladies and gentlemen who are trying to figure it out, like you were. And we've had a number of guests on that actually talked about their collegiate experience, right? So interesting that you kind of talk about that. So as you were going through that, did you have any mentors, people who kind of guided you and said, okay, Justin, here's what professional triathlon looks like, right? Here's a short course track. Here's a long course track. Here's what an Olympic kind of track looks like. Did you have any guidance or discussions along the way with that?
So I'll give you one super negative experience and one really positive experience.
Okay.
So I'll start with the negative experience. So while I was a sophomore in college. There was this guy, his name's Alex Libin, and he was a fairly good professional triathlete, and he was going to University of Iowa as well. And so him and I became really good friends during that time, and we would train together a ton. We would hang out socially a bunch, and we both were very committed to being professional triathletes. So he was sort of like my light at that time because I just at least had one guy, and I had a couple other friends or whatever, but he really was someone who like I could talk to during the summers. We got in his parents' Honda Civic and we road tripped all the way to the East Coast doing triathlons one summer. So we became really good friends. And Alex and I had gotten recruited or invited to this USA Triathlon high performance camp in San Antonio. So they had these it was sort of the original version of the collegiate recruitment program. So they sort of saw results from what you were doing on the local scene or at your regional collegiate level, and then also at the collegiate national championships. And I improved quite a lot from my first year to my second year. So I think they saw my result from the collegiate national championships, which was in Tuscaloosa, and they saw his result. And they invited the two of us plus one of the females on the team down to this high performance camp in San Antonio. I remember we got down there, we drove down there, the three of us, and day one was a FTP test on the bike. And at the time, my swim and my run were really significant weaknesses in comparison to my bike. My bike was like relatively strong, and I would make up a lot of time in the non-drafting triathlons on the bike. And so I remember we did this FTP test. I absolutely smashed it. I think I had like one of the highest watts per kilo in the room, and that was really cool. I was like really pumped. And then the next day, I think they did it was a 2 mile run test on the track in the morning, and then a 200 max into a 60 seconds rest, 800 max swim test, just standard USA Triathlon swim test. And I remember there was going to be I think it was 2 days more of the camp. And I remember after the run and the swim, the USA Triathlon high performance director, I remember her name, I'm not going to say it. She came up to me and was like, "We're good. Like, you can take off."
Yeah.
And the other kids stayed if you made it to the next round.
Right.
And I remember that really lighting a fire under me of I just knocked out the highest watts per kilogram on the bike. Yeah, my run and the swim, it's not like they were bad run and swim times. I think they just weren't anywhere near what you needed to be for criteria B for USA Triathlon high performance.
Right.
And so looking back, I kind of understand if you're a talent ID person, you need some level of benchmarks. And if the guy's running a 13-minute 2 mile, it's probably you're a little far off, buddy.
Yeah.
But that's still, I remember that really pissing me off and motivating me. So, and it was a blow in the moment, but in hindsight, definitely helped me motivate. So that was like a negative mentoring circumstance or situation. And then a positive one was my final year of college. After the off year, the gap year at community college, I realized that my local coach was doing an awesome job. He'd gotten me to pro. It was this guy named Craig Strong from in Evanston, Illinois. And really, really, really good coach, but I felt like I needed someone with professional experience. And so that's when I hired Jesse Kropelnicki from QT2 Systems. And I was really flying blind at that point. And I'm really at that time in particular, I was very OCD, methodical. Training had to be perfect. I'm still kind of like that, but a little bit less so now. Yeah. And so going into Jesse's system, who he was coaching a lot of really good pros at the time, he was coaching Lindsey Corbin, Angela Nath, TJ Tollickson. These are big names in 2013s, 2014s. These are people who are winning Ironmans, and I'm sitting there saying, I want to win Ironmans. Yeah. And so I remember calling Jesse and him getting really excited about coaching me. And I listened to everything he said. Diet, training, mindset, race selection, equipment choice. I listened to everything he said. And he taught me so much about how to train, how to be a pro, what the expectation was in terms of me as an athlete from a training side, how much detail I needed to put into every single day and executing the training, and how much it mattered for me to trust him and listen to what he put in the plan. And I
Yeah.
think that was one of the best things was like, we just established this trust right away. I gave him the trust right away, which is really difficult, I think, for some people to do. But I just said, I trust you with this right now, man.
Mhm.
And I'm going to do it exactly the way you say. And I did every single session to the letter. And I think that really amped him up to work really hard and pass along as much information to me as possible. So he developed me as a pro early on as a mentor at a really high level. So I would say Jesse was definitely the first early mentor that I had, in addition to this guy Craig from Chicago.
So why don't we take those experiences, right? And you have a prominent coaching business now, and you're working with athletes from the elite level down to age group level. What have you learned from those experiences and applied now, knowing that, especially different athletes have different needs, right? So if there's just an age grouper just trying to get by and do a 6 hour half Ironman, or you have an elite age grouper that's trying to go for a KQ, or someone that's actually a pro, really trying to step up their game. What did you learn from those experiences, and how are you applying those now?
Yeah, I mean, I think one leg that I have up as a coach is that I have sort of been through every level of triathlete. I started off as a guy who wanted to just get across finish lines and break 6 hours in a 70.3. And then I was like, oh, I really think I want to try and win my age group. And then it's like, oh, I really want to try and turn pro. Then it's like, oh, I really want to try and get in the top 10. And now I want a podium. And now I want to win races. And now I want to qualify for Kona. And it's like, as a pro. And so, having been through every single one of those, I think Jeannie and I talk about this quite a lot. I've got my degree in exercise science, which is cool. And it's something that I kind of fall back on a little bit. Like, none of that, bachelor's level education is going to be insanely triathlon specific, although it gives you the basics. We say that the more important degree that we have is DBE, degree by experience. And
Hmm.
so I feel like that definitely gives me a leg up because in the coaching world, because I've just either seen it with my athletes, having coached now for about 10 years, or I've experienced it myself. And the chances of me having experienced it myself and had an athlete experience it are really, really freaking high just because I've coached so many athletes and I've been doing it for so many years. And so nobody has the answer to every question, but I feel like I have an
Yeah.
answer to a lot of basic questions. And I think I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say I don't know the answer if I don't. But at least in this super specific niche, I know a lot about this. I don't know a lot about other stuff. Like I don't know anything about cars. I don't know anything about like how the world works or politics or anything. I know a lot about triathlon. And so if
Right.
you're looking for someone who knows a lot about one thing, I'm your guy. And this is the thing you want to focus on, I'm your guy.
Go long and deep. All right. Well, we'll save
Yeah.
the political discussion for another day. That's not. We don't do
Yeah.
that on this podcast, right?
No,
So,
no. I wouldn't even
yeah,
know what to say either.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's start to walk through your professional career, right? And I think, let's, you've been around, you've seen, you've had the ebbs and flows, right? So maybe walk through a couple critical moments, when you first started out, and then you hit some roadblocks, and then you were able to kind of have that resilience and go through, and then we'll kind of, bring that together and talk about what's happening today. But let's maybe pull a couple of nuggets, that's really relevant to the audience to say, over a 10-year period, here are like two or three monumental things that I went through and helped develop me. Maybe they're great experiences, an awesome placement. Maybe it was, a long day out at, St. George. A lot of us had long days out of St. George, myself included. So maybe kind of walk through that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like we said in the beginning of the podcast, it's been a long time. So
Yeah.
it's been 12 years racing professionally, with a couple pretty significant elite amateur years before that I took really seriously. So it's been probably 15 years of pushing it to a relatively high level. So I think for me, and everyone's different. I think if you ask a different athlete, they maybe will extract like, oh, here are my big results. Like in 2015, I won X. In 2018, I won Y. Like I
Mhm.
don't really reflect back on my career in terms of the wins and losses and the podiums versus the failures. I think those all sort of like are just part of the process.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's really been about. And if you asked me this question 5 years ago, I might have said like, oh, winning this race was like the pinnacle, or getting on this podium was
Right.
a pinnacle. But I think now, being a little bit older and having a little bit more reflection of my career, it's more about the people and the training and the
Hmm.
progress that I made over the years. So I sort of break it up in terms of the chunks of coaches that I had. So we already spoke a little bit about my first coach in Craig, and I've been really fortunate that I haven't had a lot of coaches.
Yeah.
And so like I started off with Craig, and that was sort of just like, okay, go from high level passionate kid who, is going 5 hours in a 70.3 to like, whoa, this guy's going 350 as an amateur and winning amateur races overall and turning pro. That was first step. And then Jesse sort of took me from a point where I was a good pro, but I didn't have an understanding of, I guess, like the outside world. I was just very in that world. Like I said, I just really committed to him. I knew that process, and I sort of trusted that process so much that I got 4 or 5 years down the road, and I was like, why isn't this translating to like the bigger races? I sort of was able to have success on a certain scale. And then it was like, okay, I need to transcend again. And I wasn't able to get that until I shifted over to getting coached by Julie Dibbins.
Mm-hmm.
And the Julie world definitely opened up a lot of doors for me. I think personally, athletically, and professionally. I think I just did so much over the course of those 5 years. And so I think that's probably where I grew the most as a person. I started with her when I was 25, and I went a different direction when I was 30. So I think for anybody in any career path, between 25 and 30 is a pretty significant time when you're just sort of getting your feet underneath you. Like you're either coming into a new career or shifting into your more permanent career, and you're just sort of like, you're not getting your feet wet anymore. You're sort of just putting your boots in the sand and kind of getting it done. And so I definitely saw the most success that I had in my career with Julie. And that stretch definitely was just a linear progression from the first two phases. And that's where that's my biggest gift of my career was from when I started in 2007 until 2022. So that is 15 years. There are micro setbacks along the way, but I never had a big regression. I
Yeah.
never had anything that put me out of training. I was able to train 350 days of the year, every single year for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was sort of what allowed me to actually get decent, like pretty good at triathlon. Was just didn't have any misses.
Right.
And I think some people struggle psychologically because they get burned out with that amount of time, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
give their themselves like the opportunity to realize the potential just because they quit too early and they don't have that stubbornness or persistence that I had. Or
Yeah.
maybe it's like, okay, this is just he just doesn't leave. He's just still here. He's
Right.
still
Right.
going. He's still taking
Yeah.
licks.
Yep. Yep.
You have plenty of races that, go to absolute shit, and you have plenty of times when you just have a bad workout and you don't, those are all just part of the process. They're just small little details.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was really just, yeah, from 2007 until 2022, like almost no setbacks whatsoever that you can imagine. And yeah, from 2019 to 2022, I really felt like I started to reap the rewards of that consistency. So that was probably the most successful, quote unquote, time of my career where I had the most volume of wins and podiums and qualifications for bigger races and most money, most sponsorship, most attention. That's when people started to, care what I was doing and who I was and whatever. So that was probably the most important couple year stretch.
Okay.
And then, yeah, things started to go a little bit of a different direction in that I had my first major setback in 2022 when my Achilles tendon in my left foot started to kind of get a little bit off. And so I struggled quite a lot with my Achilles 2022 and 2023. Ended up leaving Julie, and all of those things combined just were like compounded to be put me in a pretty negative situation where my body wasn't right, my training environment wasn't the same, and it wasn't as good as it used to be. Like the environment that I had with Julie, like I said, from 2019 to 2022 was insanely good. Like I was training with Tim O'Donnell, one of the best athletes in the world, one of my best friends. Every single day we were able to hang out and train together. My mental health was in an incredible situation. I had Julie on deck supporting me every single day. I had more money than I've ever had from my sponsor at the time, Waterfall Bank. So those were like the glory years.
The
It was
gold.
just
The
it was
golden age.
amazing. Yeah, like amazing time. Yeah.
Let's dive in a little bit of that because we've had guests on. You've been a prominent member, so to speak, of the Boulder scene, right? And kind of really help. And before you got out to Boulder, certainly with Mark and others, there was a prevalent endurance sports community. But I think in the last 15 years, with Crowe and To and Rinny and Tim Don and others, being out there. Tell me about how those interactions, right? Whether it was at the pool, at a coffee shop kind of help shape your mindset and what you learned from some of those, folks along the way?
Yeah, Boulder's interesting that way. I think when I didn't really have massive expectations when I got here. I just knew it was the place to be. But I think what I learned pretty quickly is that people aren't going to let you into their sphere unless you have a reason to be in their sphere.
Hmm.
And so it's not like when I first rocked up to Boulder, it's like, oh, I'm just going to go for a ride with Tim Don, or oh, I'm just going to pop into a ride with Miranda Carfrey. Like that just doesn't happen. I think those people have their guard up for good reason, because
Yeah.
if they just have every jabroni rocking up to their front door and asking to go ride, it's a little bit like I could see how that would be annoying. And I think we're in a position now where we've been here 10 years and there's a lot of folks who want to come ride with us, and I think you just have to people have to understand that we can't say yes to everybody. I mean, there's going to be
Yeah.
folks who earn our trust and we know that their ability is going to be good enough where, cool, yeah, come on,
Mhm.
it's not going to be a stress. But I think I could, at that time, I definitely didn't have any reputation or name where somebody who with any relevance would want to ride with me. But there were a handful of folks who did, who were really keen. Like Ty Butterfield, for example, has been a
Mhm.
long time Boulder guy. And Ty is just like, immediately, I remember just being in the locker room with this guy after swims, and he would just talk to you for like half an hour. He talks to everybody for half an hour, but
Right.
I remember him being really welcoming, and I think he realized I was a good guy and I didn't mean any harm, and so he introduced me to folks. And then I just really immersed myself into the culture. And I think in Boulder, this would probably be my advice for anyone who's young here, is the backbone of it is the swimming.
Yeah.
So that's where you meet people. That's where people get to understand your work ethic. That's where people get to witness your attitude. And so, knowingly or unknowingly, I sort of saw the group swims, the master swimming here in Boulder, as the vessel that would allow me to show who I am. And so I would go to those swims and I would just go all out, all out, all out. And I would lead the lane and I would be on time and I would stay late. And I think maybe people recognize that. And some people were like, oh, Justin just overtrains, blah, blah, blah. But I think some of the other folks were like, all right, this guy's here. He's putting that work in that work. And I respect, these guys respected that. So, yeah. And then I was able to get into Julie's group. And the Boulder bubble is interesting. Like at the time, Julie's group was private. But if
Right.
you weren't coached by Julie, you could get a special invitation. But the special invitation needed to be like, you needed to like know a guy who knew a guy.
Right. Right. Right.
And so I kind of like I think at that point I sort of had like a result or two enough
Hmm.
where Julie recognized that I wasn't like a Joe Schmo. I think Jeannie was also in the picture at that point, so she helped my cred because she
Right.
was winning races at the time. So it was kind of like, oh, Justin and Jeannie, like, yeah, they got enough, like, let them in. And so we
Yeah.
started swimming with Julie, and that's when I started to really get the relationships with some of like the top level pros. Because if you were anybody real, you were swimming with her group, and that allowed me to get a lot of relationships started just via that.
Yeah, and you and Jeannie have paid that forward, right? So you've been welcoming to other athletes as they've come into the area and kind of fostered that environment of camaraderie. And it's never perfect, it's never perfect in any training environment, especially in a high stress environment where you're out for your own livelihood, but you're also out for the betterment of the sport. And I think that's part of why you've earned a reputation as like the pros pro, because you've been able to balance that in a meaningful way. Excuse me. So let's kind of bring it full circle here, and I think one of the reasons why we decided to do this today is because you had a setback last year with the Achilles. You made a massive run, right? Kind of gearing up for Arizona, big race. Punted on 73 Worlds. Put your focus in. We're potentially in the best shape of your life, and then you have like a random accident, right? Which can happen to anyone. It's just one of those things. You're out on your normal route. Fortunately, it's not worse than it is. But let's get into some of the mindset stuff and let's kind of maybe get a little, raw and real here. You know, what has that done? And especially, the last year or two, you and Jeannie have kind of battled through some stuff and now, you're up here and then you take a dip and now you have to find that motivation again, right? And kind of dig in and rally. So let's talk to that a little bit. Kind of where's your head at?
Yeah, so it's been 10 days since the accident. And like you mentioned it, you know, I feel like I said this earlier in the podcast. I had 15 years of a pretty clean run, and then very fortunate for that. But then the Achilles really set me back psychologically, and that mentally put me back more. I think partially because I didn't have those minor setbacks along the way. I had never dealt with a minor injury, let alone a major injury. Never had a surgery, let alone a major surgery. So that one really pushed me to my limits psychologically in terms of questioning my motivation to continue training, continuing my motivation to be passionate about being a professional triathlete, my worth in the sport. I think that came from the internal side of can my body continue to do this, because you have those question marks, but then it also comes
Yeah.
from the external pressure of you have sponsors withdrawing their commitments and not backing you anymore because you're not able to deliver the same results due to the injury. And so I definitely went through it quite a lot in 2023 and 2024, primarily 2024. That was definitely the most down I've been psychologically. And then it wasn't until I had the surgery late 2024 and I was able to recalibrate early portions of 25 in the rehab that I realized how passionate I was still about the training and how passionate I was still about building myself up in that process of being, a high level athlete and extracting everything that I have just in that really specific domain. And because I've done this so long, my identity and lifestyle and so much of who I am is just really tied into training 20 to 30 hours a week. Like that's just such a innate part of my daily process, and it really makes me a better person. And now having that taken away from me last October, November this time, and now having it this October, November, almost exactly 1 year removed from the Achilles surgery, like I know how much better I am as a business person, as a husband, as a friend, as a coach. Like all these things, I'm better when I'm training because it supports my life. It doesn't detract from my life.
Yeah.
And so I know that a lot. And so now having this unexpected, the Achilles was harder because I had to confront all these big questions. But it was easier because we knew it was happening and you could
Right.
psychologically prepare for it. And I was in pretty poor shape. It's not like I had a race on the horizon or whatever. I'd written off the season. I threw it all away and I said, I'm just resetting here. And so I knew that going into the surgery. This was a lot different because of how hard I worked to get back to exceptional shape. And so it really took me 365 days to get back in shape. And I had to it took everything. It took patience, it took
Mhm.
fortitude, it took pain. Like it's painful to come back from a surgery. Like my Achilles didn't was in pain still from like when I had the surgery in late October to July. I didn't really get on the right side of the Achilles until July. So training through that discomfort and that pain and the rehab and the PT work and the strength and um, all of that definitely was challenging. And then I think also psychologically, this summer was really challenging just because I'd taken so much time off that my form wasn't very good. Like I just wasn't in very good shape. And so I got it back out to the races and I'm thinking to myself like, oh, it's not going to be that hard to pick up sort of where I left off in 2022. Now that my Achilles is like not torn, I had 5 podiums in 2022. So I'm like, oh, certainly I can like deliver a relatively high level of that. And then I got out there and I'm like, whoa, that year off did some damage and it's going to take me a little bit to get the wheels in motion here. And so I really
Yeah.
felt like I was 5-10% off the mark throughout the summer.
Mhm.
Um, but I did have those conversations with my coach, and I communicated that to the partners that we started with at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
that like it's gonna take me all year to get back. Like you just got to stick with me. And so it wasn't until Santa Cruz this year where I felt like, okay, that was closer. My performance in Santa Cruz, I was ninth, but the output was kind of like, all right, we can work with
Yeah.
that. That's
Yeah.
not far off.
Yeah.
And then I got into the training block for Arizona. I think I had something like 13 weeks from Santa Cruz to Arizona. And I remember every week going by being like, this is feeling. And I think a lot of people listening might know where it doesn't have to be a number on paper. It doesn't have to be a
Mhm.
wattage or a heart rate or whatever. Like all those things can be confirmational, but it's just how you feel. You get out there and you're just like, I'm firing right now. And I hadn't felt that in like 3 years. And so I
Yeah.
probably had a month of the training and before the crash where I was like, this is good. This is good shit. I'm dialed. I was hyped with what the training Matt was putting in my plan. Um, it was just everything was tracking. And that's when we had conversations about like what is next for the rest of the season. There were question marks in September, like I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know. And then it was very much like, no, I'm doing Arizona full on. I'm going to qualify for Kona.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, since then it's been a tough one to process. I think I held on to hope initially, the
Hmm.
first couple days that Arizona was still going to be possible. When you have a crash, like, oh, I just got road rash, I'll be all right. But then when the arm got infected, I needed this emergency surgery.
Yeah.
That pretty quickly got thrown out the window, and so I think I'm just coming to terms with that now. I think I've been so ill the last 10 days as well, like due to the infection, and I've been on antibiotics that I ended up messing with my system. I had to go back to the hospital, so I've been in the hospital 4 out of the last 10 days. So that's not like, it hasn't been
Yeah.
ideal from that perspective. I've been sick for the
Right.
other ones. I maybe had like 2 or 3 good days in there, but I think I'm coming to terms with it now. I think I know if this setback happened 2 years ago, I'd be like, I'm done, I'm retiring. I know I'm not retiring now. I'm gonna have to take the time to recover, but I know that the work I put in the last 365 days isn't gonna completely disappear. It is going to disappear a bit. The
Yeah.
time that I'm gonna have to take off to recover is gonna be significant, where I'm gonna have to build back. But I think it's gonna be easier than it was coming back from the Achilles. So I'm just trying to recalibrate, focus on my other stuff, and make a plan for 26.
So when you talk about some of those setbacks, right, there's the mental part of it there, and there's the physiological part of it, right? And I think as age groupers, often, the mental part, just because there's a lot going on, you have families, jobs, all this other stuff, you don't have the dedication or the commitment to like a 30, 20 to 30 hour training week. But what I've noticed, with a lot of amateurs is that, let's say you have a minor injury or you get sick or you have a family vacation or a family event, and then like you said, it's about feel, right? So maybe 1 or 2 weeks off, or you haven't had the training, and people like just rush back into it, and they're like, oh my god, I missed like 2 weeks, and it takes, and this, having been professional, I mean, it takes a while, obviously, to gain fitness. It also takes a while to lose that fitness, especially the aerobic fitness, right? So when you think about being able to take the mindset and deliver that information, to the general, the audience here, but also the athletes that you work with, what's kind of your guidance? Because I know for me and guys and gals that I train with, like, you feel like, oh, you had like a little bit of time off, I'm sick, or I had like a minor injury, like I got to get back into it, got to push it, push it, push it. But then you realize, I mean, I had nasal surgery a couple years ago. I took a month off from swimming, and actually I came back swimming stronger because I was probably tired, like so. Talk to us about kind of what that looks like and the transitions through all these minor setbacks.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be different for everyone. And I
Yeah.
think, like, I'll just talk about my experience. And I know that my Achilles surgery was really eye-opening because I left getting coached by Julie in May of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And Julie is an exceptional coach, like insanely good coach. And I felt as that time the group dynamic was changing, and Tim was no longer training with the group. I didn't really have any training partners. I wanted to change my training environment. So I was like,
Right.
I'm going to
Right.
coach myself. This is when self coaching becomes really popular. And so I started coaching myself, and I pretty much coached myself all the way from then until I had my Achilles surgery in late 2024. And I didn't realize until I took more or less 5 weeks off, and 5 weeks of detraining, how overtrained I
Mm-hmm.
was during that time. And I think now it puts some, now having a good coach in Matt Hansen, who's also looking after my fatigue,
Yeah.
how much I overlooked and how easy it is to overtrain,
Mm-hmm.
and not really understand those signals and those signs. And it's not until you have a forced rest, a reactive rest, that you pick up your head and you're like, ah, I actually probably stuffed it the last 18 months and wasn't able to extract the most out of myself. And
Yeah.
so I think if you're stagnating in performance, that's definitely something to look at, is like, okay, when was the last time you actually took an extended break?
Right.
And so yeah, the Achilles surgery was a big eye opener because I came back similar to you from your nasal surgery, being like, wow, obviously my run was pretty bad,
Yeah.
but my bike was better than it left off. My
Mm-hmm.
swim was better than it left off. Now that being said, the timing is everything. Like,
Yeah.
was the first session that I did post Achilles surgery the best session I've done? No, but yeah, you give yourself a month of getting the wheels back underneath you
Right.
on stuff that you don't have major injuries with. You can have the potential to, be a lot better if you were a little bit overtrained. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic that I maybe there's a good balance to be had here for me, like coming off the heels of this, because I went in super fit but not overtrained.
Right. Right.
All of my blood work and all that is in a really good spot
Mm-hmm.
going in. I think going into the Achilles surgery, things were not as good looking. Um, and so my energy's been good. My work life, obviously training for an Ironman takes a lot, but my ability to work has still been at a relatively high level
Yeah.
going into the Ironman. So I felt like that was positive. So my hope is that I can get over this and train. It'll probably take me until my goal is to be back feeling good, quote unquote, by the new year. I think
Okay.
that's realistic in terms of a timeline for feeling good. I think it's going to take me the majority of November to just get back on a training plan. It's going to take me all of December to feel
Get
pretty
back to
bad.
baseline. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then but I think by January, I think I'll my hope and my expect I don't know if my expectation, but I think my hope is that I can be back training at a pretty significantly high level through January and February and
Okay.
be able to put the work that I've put in the last 365 days to use in
Mhm.
early 2026, something in
Yeah.
March or April.
So with that, there's a lot of, obviously since you've been in the sport, the technology's changed and grown tremendously, right? So everything we have now, from core body temps to lactate reading to everything in between, blood. I mean, you can literally just become obsessive over it, right? Versus the balance of listening to your body. So when you think about it for just your average age grouper, right, who's trying to think about, okay, how do I manage the information that's available to me, whether it's HRV or sleep values, whatever the case may be on a daily basis, with my balance that with my training and how I feel. What's your kind of guidance on that?
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good question, I think, and this is where my experience as a coach probably impacts my opinion more than
Mhm.
anything.
Yeah.
Because what I've realized coaching a lot of people is that not everybody has the same like awareness as
Hmm.
everybody else. Some people aren't aware of the signals that their body are giving them. Like they can't identify where pain is coming from. They can't identify if they felt really good. The difference between feeling amazing and feeling like a little bit off. So for them, like that scale is it's messy. And there's some people where they're super acute and they understand it 100%. They're like, when I feel amazing, it feels like this. When I feel crap, it feels like this. And I
Yeah.
think that does come a little bit with experience. So what I find is the younger folks, they don't have a great understanding of their body yet because they just haven't felt it enough. They're just like the college kids that Jeannie and I coach, they're just kind of like it hurts there. And it's just
Right.
in like knee, but it could be quad, it could be calf. It's like my leg. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
somewhere in my leg hurts.
Right.
Whereas the older folks and the people with more triathlon experience are like, my left anterior tib is
Right.
swollen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And they know
Yeah.
exactly what it is and whatever. So I think for me, with my coach, I am able to use a lot of the subjective feedback for us to make decisions because
Okay.
I know and I am also mature enough in my career where I'm not emotionally tied to withdrawing training. And so
Right.
that's another thing to consider is like, is this person still like emotionally invested in their training and are they using it as an outlet for maybe a psychological reason? Because early in my career, I probably withheld information from my coaches because I didn't want them to withdraw my training prescription. So it was really
Yeah.
important for me to like hit my 2 hour run on the weekend at all costs, even if my calf was sore, even if I was sick or whatever. So I wouldn't communicate that I was maybe feeling sick and I would go do the long run. And it costed me the whole next week because of that. But I
Yeah.
think now, so back then it would have been really valuable for me to have a tool like a HRV or a resting heart rate monitor or something like that to communicate to
Like,
my
yeah.
coach
Give it a
without
gauge.
words. Yeah, like, hey, here's what's wrong. But
Hmm.
now I think for me, like Matt Hansen and I don't use a lot of like the wearable tech or whatever, just because it's not necessary. And if anything, my subjective feedback is ahead of whatever that wearable tech is gonna provide, whatever data that's gonna provide us. So we don't really, I don't personally use all that a lot. I think also my personal perspective is that it's just not quite there yet. And this is what I communicate to a lot of my athletes who are on the fence is like, we need wearable tech and tech as a whole to be confirmational data rather than data that we use to make decisions. If your HRV is tanked and your resting heart rate is high and you feel amazing,
Hmm.
we're not going to change anything because that could
Hmm.
be happening for a whole bunch of reasons. But if you feel like crap, you slept like crap, your HRV is tanked, your resting heart rate is elevated, you had a
Yeah.
stressful week at work, you haven't eaten well, you've had too much caffeine, you're dehydrated, we need to make a change in the training So,
Yeah.
anyways, that's how I do it. But with Matt and I, it's simple because we're just both old dogs. So I just text him and I say, Matt, my run tomorrow's too hard. Can you change it? And he's just like on it, and that's literally
Yeah.
all how it goes.
Shout out to Dr. Matt Hansen, right, who's got blends the technology with subjective feel. So with that, and then we'll dive into some rapid fire here in a second. So what do you think the most overhyped metric is? Right, there's a lot out there now, especially when age groupers look at the pros, consuming 120, 150, 180, grams of carbs per hour, but that's after weeks or months of training on a consistent basis, training the gut, doing things, eating in a particular way, not having the other stressors. So, what do you, excuse me, what do you think the most overhyped metric is right now?
My athletes really love the HRV.
Yeah.
They really love to use that as information. So that's probably,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's overhyped because it's good information. It's not bad. It's
Yeah.
not a bad thing. I'm not against HRV tracking. I
Right.
track it myself. Like it's a good metric, but I think it's just gotten a lot of attention and maybe gets people more stressed than it's worth. And I
Yeah.
think oftentimes I will just take off my Aura ring
Hmm.
when I know it's going to be bad. Like
Right.
I've
Right.
had this week that I've had where I've
Hmm.
been really sick. I've been in the hospital. I've had surgery. I wore it one night, and my HRV is typically like 140, 150, which is kind of high if you're. It's
Wow,
like
that
on
is
the high
high. Yeah,
side for
that's
HRVs.
very high. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a pretty high HRV just to give you context for what it is, and I think my
Hmm.
HRV was like 20, and my resting heart rate overnight is typically like 36, and it was like
Hmm.
55.
Right.
So, and my readiness was like 31.
Right, right. So
So
your
I'm
body
like,
knows, right? You're not ready to do anything right now,
but
right?
I know that. And so
Right,
I'm
of
like,
course,
okay,
right.
well, what is this? The only thing this is going to do is I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to upload my data, and that's going to stress me out. So I just took off
Yeah,
the ring and I haven't been wearing it
yeah,
all week because I don't
right,
want to know that. So I
right.
think that's probably the most overhyped thing that I see. I
Okay,
don't think it's worth not paying attention to, but yeah.
all right. Um, all right. So good stuff. Why don't we get into some rapid fire questions here? Um, and yeah. So let's start off with this one. If you could change one rule in non-draft racing, what would it be?
Change one rule in non-draft racing. I think it would be the unintentional littering penalties. And I understand the intention behind the rule because these cities give us the honor of hosting these amazing races there, and I think we really do want to protect their natural environments. And I think you look at something like Kona, which is our biggest stage. It's not a great look for us if we've got precision gel wrappers in the reef. And so I kind of understand it, but I think for the professional athletes especially, like we're going so fast through the aid station that for us to discard our litter, it honestly becomes too challenging. So we either need to extend the
Right.
duration of the litter zone or give the pros a little bit more leeway. So that's definitely a gripe that I have. I have a little project with Jimmy Riccatello coming up in the off season, the head Ironman official. So maybe I'll bring it up to him.
Okay. All right. Sounds great. Yeah, we'll look forward to hearing about that. So your wife Jeannie, another amazing professional triathlete. What's one thing about her that people should know but they don't?
Um, yeah, I think they should know that she is a very good triathlon coach. And she's underrated, and I think she's going to
Okay.
be one to watch for elites,
Hmm.
elite females. I think they're going to want to maybe reach out to Jeannie because maybe Jeannie and I, because together I think we have a strong package of like really good understanding of human physiology. But Jeannie has unmatched empathy. And like I said, probably the highest degree by experience that you can have as a professional female.
Hmm.
So I think that that's an area that we're really excited about going forward is working with more professional females. So that's probably a little tidbit about Jeannie. I could give you more, but that's a good one.
Yeah, yeah, no, and empathy is huge, right? Especially in today's all the things we've been discussing about uh, understanding where people are and meeting them where they are, in their journey. I think having an empathetic lens is critical to that. So you've traveled all over the world. You've been fortunate, that this career has taken you all over. If you could eat at any restaurant in the world, unlimited budget, right? Don't worry about the expense. Where would it be and what would you eat?
I don't really know a lot of restaurants, but I want to go eat at a Gordon Ramsay restaurant because I'm a huge Gordon Ramsay fan.
Okay.
Because Jeannie and I are very into like food shows. We love Master Chef. We love Next Level Chef, Top Chef,
Right.
Chopped, the Bobby Flay. So I'd love to go to Vegas, and if I were able to meet Gordon Ramsay and eat at a Gordon Ramsay restaurant and eat his food, that would be a really cool thing. He does this. Oh man, it's like a wrapped like it's like a steak with a like wrapped in a pastry, like puff pastry. I
Yeah.
forget what it's called. Beef Wellington. So he
Beef
has a
Wellington.
beef
Okay.
Wellington, and so I want to eat a beef Wellington at a Gordon Ramsay restaurant. That would probably be my choice.
All right. Shout out to Gordon Ramsay, who's also a prominent triathlete, loves the community, big part of it. So maybe this will be a conduit to making that happen.
That'd be sick.
So a training song that you'll actually admit to.
Oh man, like,
Yeah.
what's on
Come
my
on. Let's be
playlist?
honest here. Let's be honest.
Uh, Probably "Franchise" by Young Thug and Travis Scott.
All right.
That's the honest truth.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I love that song. If I have like an interval, that's probably the go-to, and the remix is even better. If you know, you know.
All right.
So
All
that's
right.
the go-to. I don't
Little
think the audience is
Andre,
going to resonate with that, but it's that's what I like.
little Andre Lopez. If you know, you know. All
Oh,
right.
he'll know. He'll know.
Yeah, hell no. All right. If you could be another pro athlete for a day, former or current, who would it be?
Triathlete or just pro athlete?
Any pro athlete.
That's an interesting one because you wouldn't want to be too big. I feel like you in professional sports you get to a level where it's just you're just annoyed. Like you have a lot of money, but your life just kind of sucks. So you probably want to be someone who's just like rich enough so you have
Right.
enough money to do whatever you want, famous and successful enough where you feel like accomplished in your career, but not so much in either that it was too much. Oh man, I'd want to be honestly. Scotty Scheffler might be too big,
Yeah.
but I kind of want to be like a Scotty Scheffler type. Maybe like a Justin Thomas golfer. Your
Right.
body's not totally wrecked. Like my body is not going to be in a good shape when I'm done. I don't
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those golfers I think are going to be able to retire and be like super wealthy. No one's going to haggle them at the grocery store. They're still super
Yeah.
accomplished and able to. They're also
Family
able to.
guys have all those, right? Have all those country
Yeah,
club memberships and yeah.
and I'm jealous they'll be able to execute their craft at a high level like late into their life. Those guys can still
Yeah.
play on like Masters Tour and PGA Seniors or whatever for a long
Right.
time. So I'd probably
Yeah.
pick like a yeah, like Justin Thomas type. I think that'd be sick.
Shout out maybe a Masters Tri Tour, right? I mean, you can get like, T.O., Crowy,
All of us
kind of
hobbling.
yeah, you know, excuse me, just something mix it up, right? The ratings are down, so to speak. So how do we inject some more energy and create some excitement? But yeah, it's tough, or relays or whatever you have with it. All right, let's wrap up. One more question. So you've been around some amazing people, mentors, athletes, world champions, Olympians. What's the best advice you've stolen from them?
Uh, Best advice you've stolen from them. Yeah, I think
Adopted, right? Not stolen, but
yeah.
adopted to your own, right, kind of.
Yeah, I think with one thing that I really observed a lot from spending a lot of time with Tio and Rinny was those guys didn't forget to smile
Mhm.
along the way. I think you see a lot of these younger pros now and it's just like win or die. And it's like you don't I'm not seeing the passion. I mean, I'm seeing the passion, but I don't know if it's coming from the most genuine and authentic place. I think when you speak to me or you hear my content or talk to me on the phone in a coaching call or whatever, I think like I just want it to come across that I'm really excited about triathlon and that this is fun for me at the end of the day. And I think I went into before I met Tim, I was probably pretty locked in and serious, and I felt like I need to make more money and I need more sponsors, and if I don't win, my life's over. And I think Tim and Rennie were really good at showing me like we're gonna be badass athletes, we're gonna work our asses off, but at the end of the day, we're gonna play some cards, we're gonna
Yeah.
have a laugh, we're gonna stop at the gas station and make a joke, and so that really I don't know, like that lightness I think
Mhm.
brings a lot out some pros really need to adopt a little bit more lightness in their approach to the training and the racing. So I think that's probably something that he never really like specifically told me, but I took a tremendous value in observing.
Crack open a expensive bottle of wine at the end of the training session or night, right? And I think
I unfortunately picked up
the
that
people
habit.
that they've surrounded themselves with, Aaron Carson and other, I mean, similar mentality, right? Like, be really good at your craft, but understand kind of your place in life as well. And I think you've definitely exuded that, right? You're the pro's pro, and I think people look up to you for being genuine. Giving it 100%, not quitting. This latest setback's not gonna bring you down, right? Just a curve in the journey. But man, we appreciate the time today, sharing your knowledge, and we know that next time we come on the podcast, you'll be back in this seat. And we look forward to continuing to share, interesting journeys of the endurance mindset with all of our audience. So thank you, Justin, for taking the time today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for making this happen now. I know it's been something that's been on our radars for the last couple months, and I was hoping it'd be maybe under better circumstances to
Yeah.
initiate. But I
Yep.
think now, yeah, hopefully this gives some of the audience an understanding of what I've been up to, and I appreciate everyone listening to these Endurance Matters podcast episodes, and we want to keep bringing you great conversations and guests. So yeah, stay tuned for the future, and just appreciate all you guys.
Awesome. All right. Next time it'll be under positive circumstances. So peace,
Thanks,
everyone,
Marcus.
and we'll see you next time.
All
Thanks.
right, peace out, guys. Later.